What's up? Jason Tatum here. Ball up wherever you are with NBA 2K Mobile. Playing game events to collect NBA legends and rising stars to assemble your dream team and settle things on the court. Download NBA 2K Mobile now on the App Store and Google Play.
Join me and follow the podcast Conspiracy Theories, where we explore what's really going on behind the official narrative. Like, what if the Loch Ness Monster isn't a monster at all, but an elephant? What do the richest 1% know that we don't? And why are they building all those bunkers? And really, what the heck is going on with the Denver airport? Join me every week to see just how high up this goes on the Spotify podcast, Conspiracy Theories. Listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
Growing your business can mean big-time logistical questions, like how are we going to keep up with all these local deliveries? Let Uber Direct offer you a helping hand. With Uber Direct, you take orders on your website, app, or by phone. Then drivers who are part of Uber's courier network pick them up from your store and deliver them to your customer's doorstep. Sounds simple, right? Uber Direct helps you give your customers what they want when they want it. Offer them delivery options in under 2 hours, on the same day, or scheduled up to 30 days in advance. Plus, share real-time tracking and ETAs by text. You can keep growing your business at a price that works for you. Never pay commission or hidden charges. Just pay a fixed fee per delivery. Delivery just got better with Uber Direct. Learn more at uberdirect.com.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything. I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony, air quotes nippy, Ames.
And this is A Little Bit Culty, a podcast about what happens when things that seem like a great thing at first go bad.
Every week, we chat with survivors, experts, and whistleblowers for real cult stories told directly by the people who lived through them.
Because we want you to learn a few things we've had to learn the hard way.
Like, if you think you're too smart to get sucked into something culty, you're already prime recruitment material.
You might even already be in a cult.
Oops. You better keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Season 6 of A Little Bit Culty. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Part 2 with our brave 4 ex-members of the Grotto. If you did not listen to Part 1,
put it in reverse for thirst.
Let us know what you think of this intense episode over on Patreon or Instagram, wherever you communicate with us. Enjoy. We are going to now hear the red flags that start to emerge in this Discord community called the Grotto. FOMO, tell us, where did shit go wrong for you?
I'm not sure I can identify it, but I started to notice a pattern of abuse. And the project is mostly male collectors, and it was with the men. I had no idea what was going on behind the scenes with how he was abusing and manipulating women. But I know that he was loaning money to people and then controlling them that way. And he would love bomb the men as well. He love bombed me. Luckily, I never was in a position where I needed to loan money from him, but he would publicly reward you and talk very, sweetly about you. Behind the scenes, he was really terrorizing people who were beholden to him. And he was really abusive. And at one of the things that was really good about the Grotto in its heyday was the community. You really made wonderful friends, and you were communicating with them on a daily basis, and you were participating in this very competitive thing, but it was a friendly competition. At a certain point in the destruction of the project, he started pitting us against one another, and he started triangulating people to have them compete with one another for all kinds of things. Either it was his attention or money or we weren't spending enough money, and this person is spending more than you. And he really destroyed the thing that was most beautiful about the project, was that it was a lot of fucking fun. And it was wonderful to compete and play this game with all these very interesting people. And it was unsustainable for some reason in his mind. And he needed just to pit people against one another. And that's when I was no longer having fun. And I forget the term that you mentioned earlier about diminishing returns, or how you're stuck in something financially. And we were all victims. I was absolutely a victim of this fallacy, because I had invested so much money, but more importantly, I had invested an incredible amount of time. I think it's worth telling the audience the absurd amount of time that was required of us to participate in this project. It could be between 3 to 8 hours a day. During some of the more complicated events that he would have, I am not exaggerating. There was one week where it was 8 to 10 hours a day for our team to participate.
And how much financially for you?
For me, enough to send a student to Harvard, full scholarship for a year, at least.
Wow.
By the end of it. And for some people, it was a lot less. I was one of the top collectors. And I was I can say I was in the top 10 collectors. I stayed on very good terms with him the whole time. You know why? Because I didn't complain. I was very quiet. And I never questioned anything he did. That was just sort of the way I played it. And I mean, I regret that a lot. But so if you did those three things, you didn't get any trouble. Right. But as soon as you started questioning, forget it, or criticizing, or saying you're hurting this person, why are you abusing this person? I actually watched my friends get abused, and I watched them get canceled. He would expel people eventually from the project for maybe just asking the wrong questions, really. So there was this culture of fear, a culture of fear where you wouldn't even want to question him publicly or privately for the kind of retribution that you might get, the verbal abuse, but also he could penalize you in the play of the game somehow. And it eventually led to that situation where if you weren't spending enough, you were penalized in the game. You were not allowed to proceed. He put roadblocks in front of you. And that is at the very end of it. That's when things really started falling apart.
Before we get to that, were you also part of the real life events, these house parties?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My first impression of him was very bad because it was just during the LFGs that I spoke about. But when I first met him, I was very charmed. He seemed like a very great, smart, gracious, generous person, fun, who had brought all these people together. The first time I met him was in New York City. He rented a loft just off of Gramercy Park to throw a huge party with the DJ. Very generous spread there, and it was a lot of fun. And it was the first time I got to meet all of these virtual friends that I had made over the course of a year. And, we had a lot in common. And we all kind of suffered from this collective hallucination. And we were aware of that. And it was, as Shayna said before, it was sort of kind of like a joke. Were we part of some weird culty group? Why are we doing this? Oh, I don't know. It's a lot of fun, and we've made friends with each other, and we're really, really enjoying it. So the first time I met him in person was a very favorable event.
When did you feel as though something wasn't right about the Grotto or about Dean or both? What happened?
So I think I could start, I have a million different stories I want to tell you all at once, but they all sort of come back to this main point that people tell you who they are and you just need to learn to listen. And I think we all thought it was his humor and his sarcasm and maybe even just his hubris and his ego and this socially awkward, avoidant personality type who was an artist and misunderstood and is Katerina said, the underdog kind of thing. So we all made excuses for him. We all made excuses for him. And, I think at some point you realize that he has issues with everybody. And then maybe there's a common denominator there. And so, for example, once we were on one of these LFG broadcasts and he spent a good portion of the time just talking shit about another artist. And right or wrong, it doesn't like matter if you're in like a power position. Like, why are you telling your community not to collect or not to like this other person? It doesn't even matter. It's just like it feels below where you are. If you're, you know, this visionary artist, like, why are you spending so much time in the mud? And this would turn into three becoming the great protector role of everybody in the grotto. Like, he would protect us from all those scams coming in, and he, again, he would tear people down to build them up, but he would trash talk like the grotto too. He talked about his community manager and he would call him an idiot and a moron all the time, despite the fact we all loved this guy. And he was sort of our touch point to three. And he just like would find ways to like tear others down to make you feel better. Like, they didn't spend that much money, but you did. Their gameplay wasn't good enough, but yours was. I'm not telling anybody else but you this thing. And like, when you like extrapolate it, one of the main problems is that he has problems with everyone, but everybody, you know, doesn't realize it because they're being love bombed and being told they're wonderful privately, even if they're publicly being, you know, wrathed at.
Right.
Can I add something to what Charm said? He, at some point, became very paranoid and jealous of other artists in the NFT space and started demonizing them and basically convincing us that they just wanted to rip us off and take our money, and that he was the only one in the space where our money was safe and that was looking out for us. And the other people were basically criminals. You know, it's basically, I'm the one true God routine, and the other ones are false gods. You know, that was just so clear to me that that was the game he was playing at that time. And it was a red flag. I ignored it. And as Charm said, I was able to overlook it because, well, we were having fun for a time. And I don't know, you just overlook these things and you forgive them and pretend they're not there until things just get to a breaking point.
Right.
Right.
Well, just as a reminder, at least one thing that we've learned is that you overlook them because the good outweighs the bad. And also, like, you're clearly all good people and you're projecting goodness onto this man. If you knew what you know now, you'd be like, oh, well, he's blah, 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 whatever we decide about him. I don't know if he's a sociopath or a con man or what, but
it's in that field.
Yeah, but you're like dismissing it, going, but he's as good as I am. That's our natural tendency. Actually, Madame Montel talks about it in her new book. It's like a halo effect. And it's a very natural tendency.
I 100%, yeah, think that the halo effect really was in play. I think because, you know, innately we're not liars and innately we saw the good in the project and the art and the people, that we just assumed like this was that persona talking and it was a joke. I can think of like a really crazy story where like I can't believe that I thought that it was okay. And I think this maybe would dovetail into some stuff Kat might want to share. So there was another member of the grotto. Doesn't matter. He was a prominent member, a big collector, and he disappeared for a while. And, you know, it was just notable that, you know, everybody was supposed to be there and present for these meetings. So if somebody doesn't show up, you kind of knew it, like, what's up? And so I was on a date with threesomes. We went to dinner, we went for a walk in the park. Like, we just had a nice New York City date, and he kept talking about it. Where is this guy? I'm nervous. Like, what's going on? And after dinner, he gets this call from another grotto member, and he gets like quiet and he gets upset, and he like it visibly starts to like tear up and cry. And so I hold him like he's huge. One thing about threesomes, which is interesting, he's a big dude. And I'm just like wrapping my arms around him and I'm holding him and I get him a tissue and I'm like, what is it? And it takes him a minute. And he's like, well, the guy got arrested. He was taking upskirt photos at a bar, but when the police looked through his phone, they found child pornography. Okay, pause. He then says, if he was a senator's son, he would not been arrested. Like, there was some unfairness to this situation. And I have this moment, like record scratch, where I'm like, no, 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 no. I get you're shocked. I get you've been scared for this guy, but that is not the takeaway. The takeaway is not that if he was a senator's son, he wouldn't get arrested. The takeaway is that nobody should have child pornography. Nobody. And it takes 3 a minute and he gets there. But like, I just thought it was shock and he wasn't processing and he wants to like take care of his people, right? But now, like when I look at it and like I didn't know, again, people tell you who they are if you listen, that he was texting and calling with Kat at the same time, who's 18, and things are getting like sexual and intimate with them. So it's like he telegraphed it. I just couldn't see it. And one last thing I want to say is he had this joke, and he did this with Shayna too, where he would say to us, and we didn't know he was recycling the line, but I just want you to look at me the way that Ghislaine looks at Jeffrey. And it was like this gross Jeffrey Epstein joke, who he seemed to be obsessed with in a weird way. And again, we just thought it was so absurd that it had to be him just laying it on thick.
Dude.
I'm going to hand it over to Kat because she probably can expand on that one.
Wow. This podcast wouldn't happen without our amazing, supportive, generous patrons. Are you with us? Come find us over on Patreon at patreon.com/alittlebitculty for bonus episodes, exclusive content, and the occasional Zoom with our fan favorites from our past episodes. It's a lot of fun over there, people.
The Frankies were a picture-perfect influencer family, but everything wasn't as it seemed.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here asking for help. He's emaciated. He's got tape around his legs. Ruby Frankie is his mom's name.
Infamous is covering Ruby Frankie, the world of Mormonism, and a secret therapy group that ruined lives. Listen to Infamous wherever you get your podcasts.
Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's.
You've heard from our sponsors. Now let's get back to A Little Bit Culty, shall we?
Okay, Kat, you've shared how you got in. Yeah, what were some of your first red flags, and when did it go from, flirty DMs to whatever you want to share?
Well, it is. Yeah, I intend to get personal on this because it really paints a picture. So basically, like 2 weeks after we started talking, we got to a point where he declared we're falling in love and that we need to have a conversation about it. So the situation is, when I was at the point in a 2 years long relationship already with a boy, that relationship helped me to deal with the death of my father, and we started living together after I was 18, and we met the war together. So it was a person, a very decent one, but it was at the same time, I moved out of the country, he was left there, we were on distance, and also it was a coming of age relationship. I was still in that space where I am very much a child. It's very much not that physical, and I was not used to even thinking of myself as bodies that can be objectified or desired. So my feelings for him in the beginning were the ones where I found in him this father figure who wants to care for me, in a sense that he can advise me on something, he can provide some support, say it's all going to be fine, because my state was very turbulent at that time. And he also saw this connection, but he imbued it with a very romantic twist before I was able to recognize what my feelings and my attachment was. And so it began to get more and more intense. He said he doesn't usually fall for women younger than him, and that the fact that I am the age of his children was also scary for him, but I was someone who transcends age, in his opinion. And this is a hook for people who kind of have to be smarter and wiser than their age, and they're still teenagers. But the thing is with that, it is a trap, because he makes you feel like you're equals, but in that, at the same time, I was super naive, super inexperienced, unable to protect myself from anything, but I was made to feel that we're equals in this. So in the same conversation where I shared my doubts, he said that he imagines having a child with me when he's 50. Because my problem was like where this can go at all. He also said he can fly anywhere, anytime. A year later, I found out he did not have a passport at that time already. So we progressed from there. He said like, okay, we can go for this. I will protect you and myself. And I was not ready to do anything yet, but he started calling me his love, and he never asked me to change my life, yet he continued to talk to me and promise me all these things. So I could not choose two futures. So I had to have a conversation with my boyfriend, because this connection started to feel to me like it was meant to happen. And the reason for that was that he was using a lot of religious language when he was talking to me. I come from basically a religious family. The way he talked to me was like, I was meant to have you. Like, we were meant to meet at this point in life. You were made to me. He repeated this like a lot. Do you realize you were made for me? It was all like, this is a fate, this is destiny. It was all odd for me, but with time, it, grew on me. I started to ease into that space because, well, it was repeated so much. And yes, the love bombing, it was on for months, like not days or weeks. It was very stable. It went on for months. We talked through the day for many of the months, and we had long regular calls. We watched series and movies together. We are both good with words, so it was easy to recreate the illusion of both emotional and physical proximity. And the fumes of excitement about this life we are starting together were very high. And the other hook was like, he said, we can do great things together, that our values are in the line with each other. We will do great things together. Our skills and strengths is combined. And it was very important for me because I felt at the time I cannot do anything about anything. And what also on my 19th birthday, he said, this is my gift for you. I decided I want to transfer you $1,000 for you to donate them to the armed forces of Ukraine. But I want to be doing it every month of the year on the same date. And for me, it was, first of all, I was shocked. I was like, no, this is too much. Even though it is very important for me, it is too much. I cannot take this. I was very repeatedly saying I'm not comfortable with it. But he said, just, you have to trust me on this. Just love, just take this. I know it's your people. I also care for them. And so that was the point where, yes, we did the donations through the months. And I felt very great because I can do something. But he did not donate the money directly. He transferred the money to me so that I feel, so that this transaction takes place. I feel that I'm taking money and doing it on my own, but I owe him something in that sense. So the physical and sexual part of the story is the hardest for me to talk about. But yeah, basically his first steps in this direction were very careful and cautious. He would use euphemisms and talk about sex as if he's writing poetry. I am a reading person, so it was a language I understood. And it felt less scary. He would hint, he would throw comments about my beauty and sexiness, but he would check my feelings. And he would also, make sure he doesn't comment on my body as side of my personality and me as a person. So, I was pretty scared of the whole thing because I also am never attracted to older men, and it was not fine for me. But he normalized this thing, this space, by repeatedly putting me into the topic, into the position to contemplate us being physically together. And as it was a relationship that was every month, I was told, I will get my passport back. I will fly to you next month. It was something where I gaslighted myself that I'm fine with it. And this is what relationship needs, even though it was very hard for me. And I never got finally comfortable with it. I just gaslighted myself into feeling okay with it. And it got to the point where he also came up with the idea for me to tell him every time I come, which was also then used the same way because he is very proud of the fact he managed to avoid through the year asking me directly for the lewd pictures. He's very proud of the fact he never had to ask, but there are many other ways you can make a person do something for you without asking. And that was the coercion, that was the encouragement of any visuals that I was posting on Instagram or sending him. Doesn't matter which context, dressed or not, I would get the double portion of love bombing for it. And then it became a part where in the second cycle of this relationship, where it would get darker, where he would start picking fights with me. He would start checking how far I can fall for him, like how much I can break. He would start kind of doing the silence treatment, saying like that I need to answer some questions for him to decide what I want to do with this relationship. That I was like, there was a problem with me hanging out with other people, talking to people in the Discord, other men, etc. And that would become the point where he stops gradually, like stops chasing me so much, and I start chasing him, in a sense that I'm already dependent on the harmony in this relationship. I'm very emotionally invested. My whole family knows about him. My friends know about him. I made this relationship for myself as real as it can get, because I could not afford for this to be a failure. Like I risked so much on it. And then the sexual content and sexual part of it would become the only point where he would turn his attention to me and consider my existence. At some, like later in months, he was not there for me anymore, but he would apologize and he would say he loves me, etc. when I would do this. So I was basically like a trained animal. And as soon as I got to the point where I'm doing this for him anyway, he stopped seeing sense in the love bombing and got kind of bored, I think. So it was like, it was through the year going on. He would show me who he is, like his behavior got very unstable. I was going physically through a lot. Like I could not eat sometimes. I could not fall asleep. Normally, like my physical and mental states were very affected. And yes, I would have nightmares. I would have nightmares about my father and him merging into something. And those nightmares were about some sexual content behavior. And I would wake up in stress and think like, this is not real. Like it's fine. But it was very heavy. And I did not realize that what he did to this relationship and connection, like a father-daughter dynamic, what he did to me, like that I was in terror. I was living in terror all this time. And I would, even by the end of the relationship, by the end of the year, I was scared of the Discord, sound message, iMessage sound. I was literally just a little scared of it. So that's where we get to the point where he basically finds another person, another younger woman in his real life environment. And he, after months of seeing her, he decides to call me and break it down for me but he does not say like, let's end this. He says like, I slept with her. There is another girl, and he watches my reaction. And then I break absolutely, like I'm destroyed at that time mentally. But he says afterwards that I did this, but I love you. So when the person stabs you and then immediately says, I love you, I still want to be with you, I don't know what to do, it is one of the most traumatic things someone can do to you. So he put the relationship on the pause for him to try the waters, and I allowed this. I was all the time hell-bent on taking the higher road, on like being forgiving, understanding, etc. And for months, I was kind of just on my own, just literally living in a depressed episode. Yeah, it was very heavy. So that's how it started to end, but it ended a little bit later than that.
Forgive me if I missed this part. Had you actually met him in person at this point?
Never. I never met him.
No.
He never got the passport. It was court ordered, and we can assume it was for not paying the child support. Maybe it was something else. Speculation here. But, it was court ordered. He didn't have the passport even when we started talking.
Wow.
It's amazing.
So all of this over technology across the pond.
Yes. Yeah.
Wild.
I was going to say, hearing this from Kat, like it's very hard for me as a mom. Like I feel very protective, and like I just wanted to also just say, Kat, like thank you for sharing that. And like I know that's not easy no matter what age you are. So that was just something I just wanted to like, I don't know. I wish we could all hug. And one other thing I think I just like want to make a point of is that like these relationships are all happening simultaneously. He's with Shayna more publicly as a girlfriend, although to me, he is telling me that they've broken up and that she's the one who's obsessed with him. that she calls him all the time, that she won't let him go, that she's begging him to move in together. She's begging him to move to LA. Like, and so he's doing that in a way where it makes me not want to talk to Shayna because like, I'm like, well, if she's obsessive, like, meanwhile, he's telling me that we're together and I'm the true thing that he wants. But it has to be a secret relationship because he doesn't want it to look like there's favoritism in the project because I was a big collector. And even in the downfall, he starts to tell people that I'm just an obsessive groupie that never got a shot. I mean, I wish I didn't get a shot. I wish I never let this man touch me. To be honest, like my skin crawls knowing that his hands have been on my body, you know, and then like, and meanwhile, to hear the narrative over and over and over again that like, you know, it never happened. And Kat, I think he wouldn't let into the deeper portions of the project also to keep her away. But there were more women too. We know of many other women at this point. Basically, if you were a woman in the project and you stayed for any time it happened to you, even if you're not comfortable coming forward, as many of them have told us privately. And then there were other artists as well. And I just want to say again, in the him having problems with everybody, he tells me those issues with Shayna. He tells me issues about another ex-girlfriend that only comes around and wants money and uses her body, you know, when she needs a little like topping off financially. And he talks a lot about his ex-wives. He says to me at one point, I don't know how to make friends. I only know how to make ex-wives. And I don't know, maybe that's a Shayna segue.
For more background on what brought us here, check out Sarah's page-turning memoir. It's called Scarred, the true story of how I escaped NXIVM, the cult that bound my life. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and at most bookstores. If you want to see that story in streaming form, watch both seasons of The Vow on HBO.
Meals bring people together, but for many families, providing their next meal can be a challenge. You can help by participating in Macy's annual Feeding the Hungry food drive. All proceeds go toward local food banks and families. Now through January 31st, you can purchase an icon in-store or online, or watch out for the blue Feeding the Hungry shelf tags, where a portion of your purchase will be donated to local pantries. Together, we can combat hunger in our local communities at Macy's.
Break time's over, people. Let's get back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. It's a good one.
Okay, Shayna, where we left off with you was meeting in real life and the big parties. Where did it go south? And maybe you could be the first to start with how you woke up, and then we'll go backwards and hear how everyone else woke up.
For me, it didn't take very long, maybe like a month, to become a part of a larger, extended abusive relationship pattern that I had been in for many years with with one boyfriend or another boyfriend that has now been broken. The spell has been broken. Amazing. But he would become a whole other person. Like, it has to be stated that there's possibly no real core to this individual that we're speaking of right now, but whatever that might even be, I've supposedly gotten the closest to it, just because of the immense amount of communication and overlap in our existences that started happening. Even when we weren't in the same city, it's unbelievable later on to discover how he could have possibly put so much time into his project, which I worked for, by the way. Our careers became entirely entwined. He completely controlled my career later on. I was a mod in his Discord. I was in almost every single access point of all of the chats in his project, all of the behind the scenes shit talking, all of the personal drama, hearing about domestic violence fights with his son, where maybe you need to call the police might be here later, something like just extremes over the 2 years that I knew him. So I ended up knowing the most. I did know his name this entire time. I knew some of his past and kind of assumed that was a long time ago and that he had changed, or that people can change. But it was a fucking nightmare to wake up and get slapped in the face with a few bits of truth over time that made it clear that I was protecting somebody that was legit hurtful And that's when everything turned around. I mean, one thing that I could say is he would have these outrageous, violent rage kind of episodes in private with me. And that it would, it would be delusional often. And he had a way of making it dissipate afterwards. And plus, like, my career was entwined with him and several other control mechanisms at that point. And there was like a point where I began to feel like I was almost doing a service to the rest of the community because I had assumed that he was mostly taking out the bulk of his rage on me. And so it was actually like a good thing that I had the capacity to like swallow and take this rage.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Shayna. Truly. Wow. Virtual hugs. Okay, FOMO. Can you tell us about the moment when you decided to leave the grotto?
It was clear that it was the end. That's what we're talking about. Yeah. My exit point when I had to finally walk away. It would have been his solo show in LA. He had was very excited about. He had been given a solo show, and he asked me if he asked for my advice if I thought he should participate, and I told him yes, it would be good for his exhibition history, etc. So nothing with him is simple. It involved a series of auctions. It wasn't just an exhibition. The actual physical paintings were there, and they had been turned into NFTs, and they weren't simply for sale. I'm simplifying, but let's say half of them would have been offered to the inner grotto at a certain price, not, I think, about $1,500 each, and half of them would then be subsequently offered to the public in an auction format. And it was very important for him to have the first set of auctions be successful. So we damn well had to bid on these things because it was all in the public register and it would demonstrate to the wider world that things had value. And God help you if you didn't buy one. Definitely lost your status within the grotto. So what happened was, and leading up to this exhibition, he was telling us how he was having meetings every day with investors and new potential collectors and other gallerists for new shows and things like this. And he was so busy networking. Well, what happened was when the first set of auctions occurred within the grotto, the numbers were very lackluster, which was a very concerning sign that he had sort of lost, that the grotto is losing faith in him. And we had all been very financially exhausted. Leading up to this, he had really, really made us spend a lot of money leading up to these auctions. So that was a disappointment. And the second disappointment, which was really the death blow for me, was that no one in the public, not a single person, was interested in bidding on any of his NFTs. So it was as if a fraud had been completely revealed to us. Like the delusion, whatever delusion he was suffering from himself and whatever illusion he was trying to create for us just completely dissipated overnight. And at that point, I just knew that it was doomed, with the collectors kind of just turning on one another and with his really thinly veiled narrative that he was creating about himself being, a really successful artist. It was all over. 2 weeks later, Charm placed a personal phone call to me telling me about the abuse to the women. And I immediately, was horrified, but immediately I could see a parallel of how he was treating the women and the men, how he was love bombing the men. He would say things to me like in personal messages and calls that no one understood him. I was the only one who understood him. Everyone else is an idiot. I'm an art dealer. No one understands the art. But, this is the same thing he was saying to everyone, to the men, to the women, that they're special. They're like the special person, and they're the only person who truly understands his mind. And, that combined with the fraud of the auctions, I knew the whole project was over. That was it. And it was incredibly painful for me. It was so sad. I was angry and sad. And I'm still very sad. I'm not over it. But anger, not so much. It's been many months. But this sadness will just continue on and on.
I think, going with what FOMO was saying is that there was this pressure to buy more and to buy more. Like you almost knew his financial situation in a weird way by like what he was asking. And I think that it got to the point where the cost of the seasons and to play this game were becoming uncomfortably high. And it was also putting a wedge in the players who just simply couldn't afford it. There was a lot of international people like in Indonesia and stuff where what he was asking could be like a month's salary. And like it was unfair to have these people participate. And so we were really being, asked to make, in some cases, like big decisions for what was supposed to be our fun pastime. And I just want to tell one story really quickly, which was I went out to a bar to meet another member of the Grotto who also lived in New York City, just like a quiet guy. And we're talking and he starts to tell me how much he believes in the project and, Grotto first, so to speak, but that he is over leveraged, that he is taking money against like credit cards in order to buy because he knows it's going to hit, like almost like a gambling addiction. Like I know it's going to hit any day and then I'm not going to want to be left behind. And also if I get left behind, I'll never be able to come back. Because there was this feeling that if you didn't do what Threesomes asked, if you missed a piece of it, right? Or you missed a day, you missed one buy-in, you'd be out of the game forever. So there was no day of which you could take a stop or even a pause. Like it was hard to be sick in this project, And while we were there, it got to be the time of day that the LFG broadcast would happen. And he like starts to like reach for his phone and kind of panic. And he puts the LFG on, on the phone, like up and just hits mute. And I'm like, what's the point of that? We're not listening to it. We're together. And besides, Three has said when members of the Grotto together, like it's always worth celebrating. And so we're still doing it. He's like, no, I can't miss it. I don't want him to know that I missed the broadcast. What happens if, he gives away a piece of art that's really valuable? Or what happens if we're not going to be able to participate unless we were on this broadcast? And you could just see him like spinning and there was palpable fear of retribution and wrath and financial consequence of which he had no finances to spare already. And like that to me was yet another red flag of, even though this person didn't have that same like personal connection to Three, it was hitting him so hard in the pocketbook that like he still had the control.
That is a great story well, not great, but a perfect red flag story to exemplify that particular pattern. And it reminds me of our NXIVM conference calls, of which we had like 40 hours of them a week.
Yeah, it was nuts.
And I would I'd log in on time. Otherwise you'd have to fill out a breach form. And then I'd mute it while I was doing the dishes, but like I was there. So we get it. Let's end on that lighter note and just say that this is, this is hard because A, I know you've never talked publicly about it. B, I know this is still very fresh for all of you and vulnerable. And like we said at the beginning, still a lot of shame and embarrassment, which is a totally normal stage mixed with, of course, the anger and sadness and the loss and everything. So appreciate you trusting us with the story. I really look forward to coming back next time and hearing how you all escaped. And this will be in the Netflix docuseries, the most dramatic part of the whole series when it gets made. I'm sure it will. And how you're healing. And between now and then, please, I think you'd all really enjoy Terror, Love, and Brainwashing. It is on Audible by Alexander Stein. And I think you'll get a lot of healing from that. So I hope that resource helps you.
Thank you guys for sharing.
Yeah, thank you so much. It matters.
Thank you for having us.
Like what you hear, do you? Give us a rating, a review, and subscribe on iTunes. Every little bit helps us get this cult awareness content out there. Smash that subscribe button. You know you want to. That was part 2 of The Grotto.
Stay tuned for part 3 on Monday, wherever you listen to this podcast. Be safe out there, people.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean. I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We're heading over to patreon.com/a little bit culty now to discuss this episode. In the meantime, dear listener, please remember, This podcast is solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. It's not intended as a substitute for real medical, legal, or therapeutic advice. For cult recovery resources and to learn more about seeking safely in this culty world, check out alittlebitculty.com/culty resources and don't miss Sarah's TED Talk called How Cult Literate Are You? Great stuff.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production, executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, in collaboration with producer Will Rutherford at Citizens of Sound and our co-creator and show chaplain/bodyguard, Jess Tardy. And our theme song, Cultivated, is by John Bryant.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying, or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.